Mike Macdonald. Welcome aboard to Seattle. You have just been hired by the Seattle Seahawks. Wow, what a twist of events it has been for the NFL coaching cycle as of late. This is Sports Guy talking that you guys are watching and listening to. I am Dustin Tran, your host, as I am here today to talk about Mike Macdonald getting hired by the Seahawks, as this hire has been categorized as a somewhat expected move for the organization. Mike Macdonald is coming off of a season where he was the defensive coordinator for an elite Ravens defense that overachieved expectations this season. The Seahawks moved on from longtime head coach Pete Carroll as they were looking to get a younger coach that understood the modern game of football better. Before I say anything else though, I want to present you guys with the topic question. So here it is. Are you impressed with the Mike Macdonald hiring for the Seahawks? Absolutely. Is this even a real question? Of course I am impressed with the Mike Macdonald hiring. When you look at the Seattle Seahawks roster, what did they need to do? They needed to improve their defense. We know that the offense is already pretty good for the Seattle Seahawks. They've got a Pro Bowl quarterback in Geno Smith. They've got Kenneth Walker III. He's one of the better running backs in the National Football League. You look at the receiving room. They've got weapons. They've got Tyler Lockett. They've got DK Metcalf. Don't forget about Jackson Smith and Jigba as well. He's one of the better rookies out there in the National Football League. And then, of course, you look at the defense for the Seattle Seahawks. They do have talent on that end of the field, but they underachieved this past season. That is because they were working under an old school coach in Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll was an old head that did not fit in the modern game. I understand that he was putting up decent records in the past 3 seasons, but quite frankly, with the roster that Pete Carroll built in Seattle, it just was not getting the job done. It just wasn't good enough. You look at how the Seattle Seahawks, they've gone 9-8 the past 2 seasons with Geno Smith at quarterback. And then the year before they went 9-8, the first time they went 7-10 with a declining Russell Wilson. It has been a while since the Seattle Seahawks won more than 9 games in a season. It hasn't happened since the COVID year. Obviously, COVID has been a while ago, so you can imagine how long it's been for the city of Seattle. They needed fresh blood in the worst way possible, and they got that in Mike Macdonald. When you look at Mike Macdonald, what do you think about him? You think of him as a defensive innovator. You think about him as a guy that gets the most out of his defensive core. What did the Seattle Seahawks need most? They needed a guy that could get more out of the defense, and they got that with Mike Macdonald, because Pete Carroll, even though he's supposedly a defensive-minded head coach, he was not getting the most out of that core. He was once upon a time a fantastic coach for the Seattle Seahawks, but it was clear that the game had passed Pete Carroll by. It was clear that Pete Carroll had too many old school ideals into his philosophy, and that just was not working come playoff time. There's a reason why the Seattle Seahawks haven't won a playoff game since 2019. There's a reason why the Seattle Seahawks have only won 1 playoff game since 2016, and that's because their head coach had too many old school ideas that got exposed come playoff time. But with Mike Macdonald at the job, that's not going to be a problem for the Seattle Seahawks. He's new school. He understands new school strategy. He understands how to get the most out of his defenses. He's going to get that on the Seattle Seahawks. They got guys that can get to the passer. They've got a pretty good corner in Devon Witherspoon. He's going to be a big-time playmaker for the Seahawks now that Mike Macdonald is the head coach of the Seattle Seahawks. And if the Seahawks can just get more talent on the defensive end of the field, they're going to be one of the better defenses in the National Football League come next year. And obviously, you look at the division that the Seattle Seahawks play in. They play in the NFC West. What is the NFC West division known for? They're known for innovative offensive football. And you look at how the Los Angeles Rams have an innovator at offense in Sean McVay. They needed somebody that could counterpart Sean McVay. Obviously, you look at how the Rams, they've owned the Seahawks in recent memory. That's one of the reasons why the Seahawks missed the playoffs this past season. It was because they got swept to the Los Angeles Rams. But when you look at the Los Angeles Rams roster, you're thinking, how did that roster outperform the Seattle Seahawks? And it was because Sean McVay was able to get more out of his unit, more so than Pete Carroll. And Pete Carroll just was not getting the job done in Seattle. I understand that he is a Super Bowl champion. I understand that Pete Carroll might be a Hall of Famer one day, but it was clear the game had passed Pete Carroll by and that his best days were behind him. Now with Mike Macdonald, you're going to get a lot more energy on the defensive end of the field. You're going to get the offense to get rolling because you're going to hire a really good offensive coordinator. I'm confident that Mike Macdonald understands how the modern game is going to work, so he's going to hire a younger offensive-minded head coach, or if he goes the veteran route for OC, that guy is going to understand the modern aspects of the modern game. So obviously, you have to praise Mike Macdonald for that. I also like the fact that the Seahawks are giving him a 6-year contract, because that means they're going to give him time to figure this out. And there's a bunch of ways the Seahawks can go with this. They can build from the middle and continue trying to build around Geno Smith, or they could just go full rebuild and try to get a superstar quarterback in the draft, within the next 2 years. I like the direction where the Seahawks are going with this. When you hire a guy like Mike Macdonald, it tells me you know what you're doing. And obviously, the other offensive innovator you're thinking of in the NFC West is Kyle Shanahan. We all know that Kyle Shanahan has a great offensive line, and there's a reason why everybody is trying to hire Kyle Shanahan's assistants. It is all because of the fact that Kyle Shanahan is a great offensive innovator, and he knows how to get the most out of his quarterbacks, and he constantly overachieves with his rosters year in and year out. And obviously, the Seattle Seahawks needed a guy that could counteract Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan, and they got that in Mike Macdonald. Mike Macdonald is going to come up with creative schemes to slow down Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan. I'm thinking about how he's going to come up with creative blitz packages that's going to pressure guys like Matthew Stafford and Brock Purdy into making mistakes, because we all know that the NFC West is the best division when it comes to quarterbacks. I like the way how Matthew Stafford and Brock Purdy played. They're two of the better quarterbacks in the National Football League, and Mike Macdonald is going to come up with a game plan to slow those guys down. As far as what they have at quarterback, Geno Smith is a solid starter. I'm not going to sit up here and say that he is an elite player, because that would be a lie, but Geno Smith is one of the better quarterbacks in the National Football League, and they can still roll with him as their starter because Geno Smith has made the Pro Bowl in back-to-back years. He's one of the better quarterbacks in the league. His deep ball is pretty good. His accuracy has gotten a lot better compared to when he was first in the league, and the fact that Geno Smith understands how the game of offense works. He understands the modern game and how to get his guys open. He understands how to elevate the play of DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and Jackson Smith and Jigba around him. Of course, they've also got the running game of Kenneth Walker III. I mean, this Seahawks team has talent. It's not like the Seahawks team is filled with a bunch of scrubs. This is a team where they've had back-to-back winning seasons, something that my Carolina Panthers have never even accomplished in their history. So the Seattle Seahawks have some pieces to build around. This is not a dumpster fire organization where they've been a losing organization for a number of years. This is a team that just needed fresh ideas in the building and to break off a little from mediocrity. That's the Seattle Seahawks. And Mike Macdonald, even though he's a young guy, he is a guy that is going to get the most out of his core. He is a guy that is going to bring a lot of energy into the room. He is an alpha male of coach. I like the energy that Mike Macdonald brings on a daily basis. There's a reason why the Ravens defense felt energized game in and game out. That is because of Mike Macdonald. He understood how to get his guys fired up. He's a great leader of men, and he's a great defensive schemer. And obviously, if he can nail down this offensive coordinator hire, that's going to be an even better hire for the Seattle Seahawks. But I like the move that they're going with because of the fact that they have to deal with really good coaches in the NFC West, and they could not afford to have an old head like Pete Carroll continue to roam around the sidelines because it just was not good enough. And you look at the candidates that are going around. You look at how Ben Johnson, he didn't even get hired this coaching cycle because he pulled himself out of the coaching cycle. And then you look at how Bobby Sloak, he pulled himself out as well. So obviously the top two guys on the coaching market were not available, and the Seattle Seahawks could not go for an old head like Bill Belichick, because otherwise you should have just stuck with Pete Carroll. And then of course there was also Mike Vrabel. It's an interesting name in my opinion, but Mike Vrabel, he's an old head as well. There's a reason why teams have stayed away from Mike Vrabel. They don't want the older defensive minded head coach, so obviously you got to stay away from that. Of course there was also Jim Harbaugh, but I didn't think they were going to go after him. It seemed like Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers were a match made in heaven. And then of course you look at how the other defensive coordinator that they could have hired was Dan Quinn. I mean, they could have hired him, but then if you do that, then you might as well should have just kept Pete Carroll, because Dan Quinn is an extension of Pete Carroll. Mike Macdonald was the best possible hire by the Seattle Seahawks. As far as the real reason why Mike Macdonald was hired by that organization, it was because they needed fresh young blood in that organization, and they got that in Mike Macdonald. They also needed a guy that could get more out of the defense than what Pete Carroll was doing. They got that in Mike Macdonald. I obviously love the hire. I think this hire is going to be fantastic for the Seattle Seahawks. So that is why I was very impressed with the Mike Macdonald hiring for the Seahawks, as they just got themselves the defensive version of Sean McVay. Remember, go ahead and subscribe to Sports Guy Talking, like the video, and please comment down below. If you guys do that, I may shout you guys out in my Instagram story every Monday. That'll be for the @Dustin Instagram account. Make sure to follow me on Instagram @Dustin Tran, and that's Sports Guy Talking. Also, go follow me on Twitter @Dustin Tran. Again, go ahead and do those things that I just told you guys to go do. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed the content that was just produced. Peace out. I hope you enjoyed that video. Want more Sports Guy Talking, the home of great sports content? Make sure you click that subscribe button to get the latest from Sports Guy Talking. Go ahead and like the video, comment down below, check the description box on the video in order to follow my Instagram and Twitter. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from the YouTube channel, Sports Guy Talking.